If car A crashes into car B, which then crashes into car C, which car is liable for the damages to car C? We're going to answer that question and talk about the principle of proximate cause and indemnity today. What's up? You're watching Tito Talks, non-life insurance discussions with me, your favorite Tito Miguel, who loves to make non-life insurance discussions easier to understand for both agents and clients. Magandang Friday po sa ating lahat. Thank you so much for dropping by. I'm so glad you're here with me again before we start another relaxing weekend. I know you guys worked hard this week, so have I, and we are looking forward to some rest and relaxation over the next couple of days. But before that, let's take you into our last video for the week. Now, we're still doing our 3-part series wherein we talk about the principles of insurance, and now we're on video 2, part 2. Now, if you missed part 1, wherein we talked about insurable interest and utmost good faith, the link to that video is right on up here. So if you want to check that out, you can click on that as well. Now, for today, we're going to be talking about the principles of proximate cause and the principle of indemnity. And in order to introduce us to these lessons, I introduced another question during our last video. If car A crashed into car B and car B crashed into car C, who's going to be liable for the damages to car C? And the answer to that question is car A. Yep, that is right. Even if car A did not directly damage car C, car A was responsible for the sequence of events that actually brought about the ultimate demise of car C. Well, Miguel, paano naman si car B? Wala bang liability si car B kasi si car B yung bumangga kay car C? You're right about that. But take note, car B may have been the most immediate cause of the damage, but car B was not the proximate cause of the damage to where the liability really lies in. And this is why we're going to start talking about the concept of proximate cause. Now, things are going to get a little bit muddy here, and I hope you stretch your patience with Tito because the theory, the concept, the essence of proximate cause is not just only used in insurance claims, in insurance disputes. No. The concept of proximate cause is also a popular legal principle used by lawyers, judges, plaintiffs, defendants in certain civil and criminal cases. Yes po, pati sa usapang legal, napapasok din po ang proximate cause. This is why it's very, very important for agents to understand proximate cause. But don't worry, you're not going to be acting like lawyers or judges or investigators on behalf of your clients, but it is important that you're capable of explaining what this concept is to your customers, especially when certain claims they might file don't go their way. Most of the time, it's going to be because of proximate cause. But what is proximate cause? Interestingly enough, the term proximate cause was definitively defined. Well, one of the most accurate definitions of proximate cause, you'll be interested to know this, was created by a judge, not because he was studying, but because he was presiding over a specific case. And we will have a separate video on this case. And this case is known as let me pull up my notes here. This case was known as the Pawsey and Company versus Scottish Union and National Insurance Company. This was an insurance dispute over a certain claim all the way back in 1907 about a certain dispute. Now, as per the judge, he drafted this very, very comprehensive definition of insurance, and of proximate cause, and I'm going to show it on the screen for you. Proximate cause means the active, efficient cause that sets in motion a train of events which brings about a result without the intervention of any force started and working actively from a new and independent source. So that's the definition of proximate cause. Ano daw? I know, it's quite a mouthful, right? Let's chop that definition up into 2 sections and we'll break it down for you. The first half is the half that talks about proximate cause being the start, being the active, efficient cause that sets in motion a train of events that brings about a result. The active and efficient clause that brings about the chain of events. Yung punot dulo. Kumbaga, one of the best examples I can provide for you guys is the concept of fire, fire insurance. To be specific, earthquake fire insurance. What do I mean when I say this? Take note, even if you have fire insurance, if an earthquake hits your house first, which then causes a fire to start, you're not covered unless you have earthquake cover. I'm not kidding. That was mentioned in one of our previous videos as well. 3 things you have to know about your fire insurance. Please take a look at that as well if you're more interested in that concept. So, as I was saying earlier, even if fire was what damaged your house, if the fire was caused by an earthquake and you don't have earthquake cover, the fire damage will not be covered, even if you have fire coverage, because the proximate cause of the fire was not fire in itself, but it was an earthquake. I hope that's easy enough, though, to understand, because it can get more complicated in more complex situations. What if there weren't just 3 cars involved in the accident? What if there were 4 cars involved? 4 cars coming from different directions, 4 cars coming in at different times at the accident. Then things get a little bit messy. And this is wherein the principle of proximate cause comes into play. Insurance companies, especially their claims people, don't look for the immediate cause, kung ano talaga yung bumangga sa sasakyan, ano ba talaga yung sumunog sa bahay, but they look for the underlying dominant cause na yung punot dulo ng pinsala. And sometimes that's very easy to determine, and sometimes that may be difficult to determine because of intervening circumstances which were mentioned in the second part of the definition. Balikan po natin. Basa. Without the intervention of any force started and working actively from a new and independent source. So, if your proximate cause hindi siya inistorbo, hindi siya naapektuhan ng ibang puwersa galing sa ibang bagay bago dumating sa kinahantungan, then it's the proximate cause. But if something else intervened, different energy, different cause, different source, which contributed to the final damage, then your initial suspect may not be the proximate cause and you could be looking at something else. And this is what our claims teams always look out for, especially pag may claims po. What's the proximate cause of the accident? What's the proximate cause of the loss? Is that proximate cause covered under the policy? Now, isn't that interesting? Next off, you've got the principle of indemnity. We're going to take it easier this time, as the principle of indemnity is quite simple, and it actually gives us a lot of a lot of room to say no to a lot of things, and it gives you reason for a lot of things as well. Let me explain. The principle of indemnity dictates that as insurance companies, or the goal of insurance is not for the profit of our customers. No, 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 no. The sole definition of indemnity is not to provide profit, but to provide indemnification. And when we say indemnification, we mean to restore the client, the customer, to whatever their financial status was before the loss. And that's very, very specific. Kung ano ka man, kung anong meron ka man, kung anong yaman meron mo, bago ka madisgrasya, dun at dun ka lang din namin ibabalik. Walang labis, walang kulang. And that is the main core of the principle of indemnity. Customers should never profit from their insurance claims. Teka lang, Miguel, paano kung nakipag-areglo ako dun sa nakabangga sa sasakyan ko, binigyan ako ng 10,000, yung claim ko 3,000 lang. Anong gagawin ko? Kumita ako. Sorry. that does happen from time to time. But mind you, we do have checks and balances for that. And I already discussed that in a previous video. Tungkol sa areglo, nakikipag-areglo kapag may banggaan, check out that you may want to check out that video to figure out how insurance companies operate. It's very, very insightful. Now, when it comes to the principle of indemnity, as we said earlier, customers are not allowed, or it is not accepted that you profit from your claim. You are only supposed to be restored to whatever financial state you were in before the loss. And that is the pure purpose of insurance. This is why we have concepts such as depreciation, wherein customers pay for a certain amount of expenditures for new replacement parts if in case their old vehicles need new parts. It's one of the biggest contributors to this concept, yung concept po ng depreciation. Don't worry, we'll have a separate video on this concept as well in due time. Tapusin lang muna natin tong 6 principles po natin. We still have a lot to talk about. Now, wasn't that discussion fun today? And before I leave you guys, I'm going to give you another question to introduce us to the last 2 concepts, or the last 2 principles of insurance that we are going to talk about, which will be on next week, Wednesday. And this one's another situational question. I hope you can stretch your brains on this one. Let's say Pedro burned down Juan's house. So Pedro is liable for Juan's house. He has to pay for the damages he caused. But Juan was able to claim from his insurance. Should Juan also be able to claim for damages from Pedro, since Pedro was the liable party? Who's supposed to ask for damages from Pedro if Juan had already been paid for by the insurance company? Quite an interesting question, right? We're going to answer that question next week, Wednesday. But also, don't forget, we've also got another interesting topic for English Mondays this coming Monday. And without further ado, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, this is your favorite Tito Miguel, always saying, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.